You make an excellent point right out of the gates, though, on the timing, because the price was only going to go up. Now, the counter to that is, what if he stinks this year? What if he gets injured this year? But you know what? They've already made the commitment. They've already put themselves in position where they're going to have to open up the Walmart vault for this guy. You're not going to get Mark Rodgers, his agent, to say, oh, okay, I'll only take $35 million. If for some reason Russell Wilson doesn't have a great first year, because there could be plenty of reasons other than him for it. So you're going to step into a big contract either way. The sooner you do it as a team, the better off you are. And we tell teams that all the time. Don't wait. The longer you wait, the more expensive it gets. It always gets more expensive. It rarely gets less expensive. Do it now if you can afford it. And we know that this ownership group can, Peter.
Hey, look, the other part of it, Mike, is and again, look, I do not mean in any way to be some sort of Wilson apologist or Wilson hooray, all that stuff. But everybody says, man, Wilson, he really declined last year. Oof, boy, I'll tell you what. Let me just ask you this question, all right? If you're completing 65%, if in a down year, you're plus 19 touchdown to interception ratio, if in a down year, your rating is higher than your career average. Yes, and I do value, I really do. I value that the QBR thing that ESPN does, because it is more valid than the passer rating. And I totally get that. But the passer rating is not absolutely insignificant. It's part of the formula. And I guess what I would say is, if that's a bad year, then, about 15 quarterbacks in the league would sign up for that. So I think even if he doesn't play to like his, whatever you'd call it, maybe your 2015 or 2016 standard, or even the 2020 standard, I wouldn't be all that concerned. Russell Wilson is just a different person. And he's a different bird when it comes to keeping himself in shape and making sure. Look, I'm just telling you, when I left there, Mike, and I saw the way Russell Wilson had thrown himself into this. And look, a lot of coaches, I had one very prominent coach say, man, I don't like that. When I asked him about, hey, what about Russell Wilson on the morning of practice? Okay, that he has his skill players come into practice an hour early, and they all just go out and they have their own walkthrough with no coaches there. It's only Russell. And so a lot of coaches will say, geez, I don't like that. I want one message for everybody. I want coaches to be on hand. But Nathaniel Hackett signed up for it. The Broncos offensive coaches signed up for it. And all of the wide receivers and tight ends were coming in an hour early and going out and doing stuff with Russell. And that, at that time, Nathaniel Hackett said, hey, listen, players have to own this offense, and I'm okay with it. We'll see how that goes, but I find it hard to believe that he wouldn't be good. That's all.
2 points. First, last year was an aberration for one very big reason. He had the finger injury that he suffered on the Thursday night against the Rams, and he came back too quickly from it.
Back too early, yeah.
And just like Kyler Murray had the ankle affect him, I believe, for the rest of the season, the finger affected Mr. Unlimited. It limited Mr. Unlimited for the rest of the year. And that factors into, I think, his final performance. Second point, Peter, and this is the big point that can easily be overlooked. This is a dramatic transition for Russell Wilson from the standpoint of how he will be used. One of the big reasons he's no longer with the Seahawks is that the Seahawks always viewed him as a piece of the puzzle, not as the puzzle. He wants to be the guy. He wants to be Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers, the player through whom everything flows. Not just a cog in the wheel or the machine. God, it's not even a Sims day. I pay honor to Sims when he's not here and start twisting up metaphors. He doesn't want to be a piece of a bigger machine. He wants to be the engine. He wants to be the guy. And we're going to find out. We're going to find out whether or not it works. A couple of years ago, the whole let Russ cook thing was about trying to do that. The problem is they didn't stay ahead of the defenses. They caught up with them. Remember, he had such a spectacular start to the season, but they didn't pivot. They didn't adjust. Sims was all over that. They weren't changing up anything based upon what they'd put on film, and it was hard. It was easier for defenses to shut them down. This is the challenge, the reality, the fascination for me. Russell Wilson with the Denver Broncos. How will he fare as the guy who stirs the drink? That's who he's going to be. And it's either going to work or it's not. But he's believed for years that will work, and the Seahawks haven't let him do it. The Broncos are building the offense around him, and he's putting in the work. That's good. He's taking full ownership of it. But we won't know whether or not it actually works until we start playing the games, especially after there are enough games on tape that defenses start having enough where they can more adequately play the chess match with Russell Wilson, Nathaniel Hackett, and the rest of the Broncos offense, Peter.
Look, Nathaniel Hackett comes from Green Bay. When he left Green Bay, the entire offensive staff left. Luke Getsy left to go to Chicago, obviously. I think that there was, I'm not even saying a period of mourning by Aaron Rodgers, because he understands this is the way life goes. Plus, he gets Tom Clements back, and he always loved Tom Clements as a personal coach, or position coach. But I think the one thing about Nathaniel Hackett is that he is relentlessly a self-scouter. And if they play Seattle in the first game of the year and 5 things don't work, they will be back in the office on Wednesday morning. Russell Wilson will be, and he will be trying to figure out why those things didn't work, and should we throw those out and try X, Y, and Z. So I think that he's going to be a good match with Nathaniel Hackett, because Nathaniel Hackett, and I'm not saying he's married to nothing, he's married to innovation, quite honestly. And I think that's all that Russell Wilson wanted. Yeah, he wanted some control. He wanted some sense of, listen, this has to be a marriage that works for everybody. And most of the time in Seattle, he didn't think it was a marriage that worked for everybody. So I do think in that way, with Nathaniel Hackett and with this coaching staff, Russell Wilson is going to feel more a pride of ownership, a little bit of a pride of authorship to this. And I think it will motivate him to make sure that this doesn't go off the tracks.
The ultimate football question, in my view, and Chris Sims has had Russell Wilson gradually fall in his quarterback rankings over the past few years, not necessarily because of Wilson, but because there's so many great young quarterbacks who have jumped him. I have noticed one thing about Wilson that I'm going to be very curious about as it relates to his mobility, because the best quarterbacks now can take a bad play and run it into a good play, primarily by buying time behind the line of scrimmage. We see Mahomes do it. We see Rodgers do it. We see Josh Allen do it. We see so many young quarterbacks, and in Rodgers' case, old quarterbacks, have that ability to extend a play and give a receiver more of a chance to get open and make something happen. I've noticed the past couple of years, specifically last year, that Wilson doesn't seem to have that same explosion and burst. He's a little thick. He hides it. He carries it well. But he's got a pretty thick midsection on him now. And I don't know whether he's lost a step or two or everyone else is a step faster than him, but that's going to be a big part of how this works or doesn't, because not every play that you call is going to go off perfectly. There's going to be plays that get stymied by the defense. And what happens? Do you go Kirk Cousins and just collapse and fall? when the walls close in, or can you buy time with your feet? We saw some clips of him running around at practice, but I want to see it game speed. Does he have that little bit of extra edge, that little bit that makes a difference? It allows you to run away from the front seven or any blitzing defensive backs just long enough to get the ball to one of your receivers. That's going to be a key piece in whether or not this works, Peter.
Well, last year, even though he did miss 3 games last year, Mike, it was the fewest amount of rushing / scrambling yards per game that he's had in his career. And so I would expect that to go up, maybe not drastically. I mean, there was a time when Russell Wilson would rush for 50 yards a game or whatever. He had that one year where he literally had 800 or 900 yards rushing. But I don't see him coming back to that. But I definitely see him. Here's the one question, Mike, and I asked this to Nathaniel Hackett out there in Denver. The question that I think is really significant is, will Russell Wilson become a quicker decision maker in this offense than he was at times in Seattle? And by that, I mean, how many plays where Wilson is out of the pocket, scrambling around, trying to make a play last until he finds a perfect solution? And in the NFL today, the pass rushers are so quick and they get on you so fast that you really need to say, listen, I'll just do the check down to the back. I will hit Alfred O, the tight end whose name I can never pronounce. I will hit him, on a shorter intermediate route. Okay, those are the type of things that Nathaniel Hackett really wants out of Russell Wilson. He doesn't want the circus scrambles anymore. The old Fran Tarkenton scrambles. And I think that's going to be a real test. The average time for him to get rid of the ball has to be lower than what it was this last couple of years in Seattle.
And that's going to be the fun thing to watch, because we see Patrick Mahomes do the Fran Tarkenton scrambles, and they work because Mahomes stays just a step ahead of the pressure and eventually has somebody pop open and gets the football to them. So you don't want to overdo it, but you also don't want to give up on a play too early. You want to use your feet to extend it. But again, it's fascinating from a football standpoint what Russell Wilson will be in the Broncos offense, what the Broncos offense will be with him. And once we get into mid-October, late October, and there's enough film out there, will the offense improve or will it regress? Because the defense will be able to try to counter it, and it's going to be part of this self-scouting, chess match, film study your own film, and really work out ways to stay ahead of that defense in a very difficult conference and a very difficult division. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.